Hello and welcome to Oak Road Hatter, where I'm joined by Jamie Castle as we dissect another Luton Town away defeat and look ahead to an FA Cup weekend with our old friends Nottingham Forest. How are you doing, Jamie?
Yeah, not too bad. Was just saying off air, it was my first week back playing five-a-side, so good chance to burn off those Christmas calories and I guess burn off that steam that is the Luton Town frustration right now. So yeah, probably a good time to talk Luton rather than last night amidst the frustration. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Well, Luton players could have done with burning off some Christmas calories over the Christmas period, I think, because it's now 4 losses on the bounce, all of them coming between since Christmas, and it's really not looking good at the moment for Rob Edwards. The most recent result saw us lose 2-1 away from home at QPR. And if you missed it, the second goal that put it to bed for us, well, put it to bed for QPR, wasn't exactly a thing of beauty. And we'll be getting into that. But before that, don't forget to check out our Oak Road Hatter merch on oakroadhatter.com. We've got plenty of different options for you. There's something for everyone in your life, whether they're a Luton Town fan or whether you just want to frustrate a fan of another club. Although, with our current form, I'm not sure how frustrated they'll be getting. But let's get straight into things, Jamie. QPR 2, Luton Town 1, and really, they were the only team that deserved to win.
Yeah, I think I guess rhetoric coming out of Edwards and the stats probably don't tell the truth, if I'm being honest. I think bar 15 minute spell in the second half, yeah, it was QPR's game really. I think overall I liked some of the patterns of play. I think obviously we'll get into it, but changed to a back four, um, and I think it definitely looked better than what for me is or has been a very passive back five. So yeah, I think positives. I think that I want to stress that there were some positives, but yeah, still very much QPR's game that they deserve to win. XG suggests a scoreline of probably 2-2, but if I'm being honest, it's probably more of like a 5-3 game. I think if Frey had stayed on for longer and had a couple of the chances that Lloyd had late on, then I think it would have been a probably more damning scoreline than what it was. So yeah, I don't want to be overly negative, but once again, it's not good enough, right? And as you say, not only is it 10 straight away defeats, and I think that clearly gets the headlines, but it's now four defeats on the bounce, sort of in all competitions, likely to be five, given I guess the prospect of Forest away, who are going big guns at the minute in the Prem. Um, and then we get into what is a pretty crucial fixture run, sort of between now and the middle of February. The fixtures are, I don't want to say straightforward because clearly we aren't good, we aren't good either, but they are certainly in our favour for a side that is desperate for a win. So yeah, it's a pretty damning position right now. 2 points off the bottom three, and lots of talk through, I guess, the NJ era about false positions, etc. But I think you'd be hard pressed to find a Luton fan that could argue that we are in a false position right now, because I don't think we are.
And you mentioned there that it was a back four, and that's something we've been calling for what feels like months now. I think it's probably just a few weeks in reality, but a few weeks that seem to have dragged on forever. Um, but Edwards did go to a back four, and it was four defenders in that defence that actually playing in their natural positions with Walters, Holmes, McGuinness, and Bell. You looked at it on paper and you thought, oh, this is a pretty solid defence. But QPR were pretty dominant going forward from minute one in the game. And if it wasn't for some absolutely unbelievable saves from Thomas Kaminski, they probably could have been at least one, maybe 2-0 up before they even went ahead. Jimmy Dunn had a completely free header after staying up from a set piece, which is something I think Sky Sports identified that he does quite often. And he got a brilliant header to it, but the save Kaminski pulled off for that was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, he was, I think, probably man of the match for us yesterday. In terms of defensively, I think, yeah, obviously back four is what we wanted, and I think Edwards pointed it out in his press conference that clearly that there were defenders defending with one less body in there, which I think I completely appreciate. You've got players that that have obviously played a back five now for pretty much, I guess, 3 years. In it sort of clearly there are new people in the system, but largely Luton Town have played a back three for the best part of for 3 or so years now. So to switch to a back four, especially given the rumours that the players had 2 days off from the Norwich game as well, so he only had 2 days to really sort of fully implement it, and clearly they would have worked on it before Norwich. I'm not saying that sort of, I'm not saying that the 3rd of January was like the first day that they looked at a back four, but clearly it's different, and you've got Bell, Holmes, and McGuinness have sort of shifted across, and then you've got Bell that now is defending from a bit of a wider position, and maybe Holmes or McGuinness is used to sort of Bell tucking in a bit inside, and it can be confusing, and I get that, but I just think in those aerial duels, nowhere near aggressive enough. And I guess the first goal came from a situation that we've seen. I don't know, but it surely has to be near enough the double figures now in terms of that sort of goal that we've conceded under Edwards, in terms of a long cross over the top, a full back or a shorter defender gets beaten by a larger forward at the back post, to then, okay, he didn't nod it in, but he then won the ball and had a, I think tapping probably understating the finish, but regardless, forward's been able to win the ball in the back post and stick it in the net, and that goal we've seen way too much, whether it was last season Kabore, this season obviously Walters. So yeah, that's really frustrating, because it's something that you have to coach, and you have to be more aggressive. Don't go under the pressure of the two hands on the back. And yeah, okay, it was handball, and was Frey a bit forceful with the two hands in the back? Probably, but you just have to stand strong, and that's football. You can't just go under the pressure of a big centre forward behind you, and that's really frustrating, because okay, that was what was out in the goal, but lots of the aerial duels was where they got the, I guess, the chances from, and you've got two centre halves there in Holmes and McGuinness that, I mean, their strengths are defending, right? They're not exactly small ball playing defenders where their strengths are being able to pass through the lines or maybe drive up the pitch. Their strengths at their core is that they should both be your old school centre halves, and I think neither of them showed that yesterday. Bell as well. I think I do love Amari Bell in terms of what he's given us. I do have question marks now in terms of maybe legs. I think going forwards, I think the injuries seem to have taken a lot out of him, and I think definitely would have him around and keep him in the squad. I'm not saying that it's getting to the levels where maybe you move him on, but you just want probably someone a bit more athletic and a bit stronger in there, because I think he's obviously now 30 plus, and he's had a couple of injuries that has kept him out, and clearly he's still trying to get back up to full fitness, but that's another question mark there. So yes, it was a back four. I think it definitely, for me, that there were signs of improvement, as I said, in patterns of play. And if we were to get Mengi back, and I mean Hashi was on the bench, and for me, I'd give him a go. I think he had a 3 game spell. I can't remember when it was, but I know he played in the Norwich away game, and he forced Saints to switch sides. He marked him so well. So I think it's harsh that Walters has come straight back in, if I'm being honest with you. And I certainly in the Forest Cup game, but for me, sort of thereafter from the Preston, I think Preston at home is the next home game in the league. I'd like to see Hashi there. I think he gives more going forwards. I think he's been harshly, I guess, treated by a lot of the fans. I think there's a hangover of judgment from last year in the Prem in terms of his performances. Clearly, he weren't good enough, but then it's the level and being played out position. But yeah, I think the back four was something to stick with. If we get players back and sign more players, I'd like to see how it goes. But either way, just yeah, I think that there were probably some question marks as well last night on Rob still.
I want to talk about Walters a bit more, because he's been out for a little while with injury, but we've seen him come back over the last couple of games. And in the previous game against Norwich, he looked fairly good going forward, apart from his first touch, which I thought was pretty terrible in that game. And I thought, oh, it'll be a one-off. He's just not up to game speed. But in this game, he looked really, really off it. He was bullied by Frey for that first goal. And I know you can say it was a handball and there was a slight push, but he's got to be stronger in that area of the pitch. You know Frey's going to target the smallest of that back four, and he certainly did that. And he had the better of all of the back four throughout the first half in particular. He was turning McGuinness at times. He was pulling off and going on to Walters for those balls into the box. And you could see he was going to cause a problem, but we knew he would do that anyway from the previous game. But even when Walters was getting the ball, his first touch seemed to be nowhere near the pace of the game, which is so frustrating. And when you think about it, he's an ex-Arsenal player. You've got to wonder, like, how was he getting into those youth sides at Arsenal if he doesn't have a good first touch? Because either he's not up to game speed or he's just not had it in the first place.
No, I think it is there. I think pre-injury, I saw enough from him to suggest that there was a good player, good talented technical player in there. So I'm happy to put it down to rustiness and getting back to match fitness. But again, for me, ultimately, we saw in the first half he was having a shocker. That didn't change in the second half. So why it took until the 86th minute to make a change, I it frustrates me when Rob seems to do like for like changes all the time, but then is sometimes hesitant to make a straight swap in a position that quite clearly needed a straight swap. You pointed out Frey, but Chair in the first half as well. I mean, I think Kaminsky had a go at Walters a few times for letting Chair too easily cut inside on his right and put crosses over to Frey, who had sort of drifted over to our left side. So Walters had, I think a shocker isn't harsh at all. I think he was awful yesterday. Happy to put some of the more technical stuff down to rustiness. I mean, there was that header that basically was a great pass to Lloyd in that second half where he managed to get a shot away. Yeah, I just think Edwards needs to be stronger there and make the change earlier. I would have made it at half time if I'm being quite honest with you. He was that bad, but don't get to 86th minute when you're behind for I guess what 20 odd minutes. 20 minutes more than he was on the pitch for. Just make the change, okay? Yes, it's not going to add too much impetus, but just stop making the mistakes because, yeah, obviously you want to make changes to go forward and so I guess try and get a goal, but equally you don't want it to be 3-1 or 4-1, and it could quite easily have been that if Lloyd had managed to put 1 or 2 away. So avoid those mistakes. If Walters having a bad day, just take him out the firing line and do the straight swap for Hashi, who is a more than good enough replacement for him in that situation. So another issue for me is in-game management from Edwards. It was clear to see how bad he was. So the fact that he didn't make that change is a huge red flag for me.
Yeah, you could see Walters was struggling throughout the game, and we were saying the same thing. We thought he should have gone off far earlier than he did. Just take him out of the firing line, if not anything else, because he's a
Yeah.
young defender, and you don't want him losing confidence from struggling against sides like QPR with physical players like Frey. Someone who did look pretty good in a different position to what we've seen him recently, and he's someone who's looked good quite often when he's played, is Zach Nelson. He was probably, in my opinion, our standout player.
Yeah, but again, probably not in his strongest position. I mean, he's he's right-footed, and it seems like Edwards likes to play these inverted type wide players, but whether it's at wing back or sort of further up the pitch. Clearly, I think Chong's strongest position is on the right, so I sort of I'm happy with that. I think Chong on the right is better, and he's got the ability to cut inside and be able to have a sprayer pass across the box or get a cross in or take a shot. Whereas Nelson, I think he gets a bit lost maybe out there on the wing sometimes, and I don't think that is him. I think he's a very very good young player, and I'm excited to see how his career develops. But I just wouldn't put him out on that wide left. I mean, certainly not out wide for me, but certainly not on his weaker side. You see Van Darbo yesterday, who obviously we'll come on to. I think a decent debut, nothing outstanding, but I think you saw a few good touches. But fundamentally, I don't quite know what he is yet. Whether he's a sort of a deeper line 6 or a more box to box type Alan Campbell midfielder, but he certainly isn't a number 10 off the striker midfielder, and that role for me would have been perfect for Nelson. And when you've got Jacob Brown on the bench or other options that maybe could have played out wide left, for me, I just would have played Darboe a bit deeper and Nelson in that 10 off Morris. I think that would be a really good position to see Zach play in. So yeah, I think he's been a bit of a bright light in a pretty dark period at the minute. But again, another player that I just want to see in a stronger position, because if he's showing what he's showing and in a position that probably isn't overly known to him, then I'm excited to see what he can show when he's in that number 10 position.
And you mentioned Darboe there, and I think it's time we talk about that midfield because when the team lineup came out, we was pretty surprised by the back four being suggested. I was more surprised when I saw the midfield. I didn't expect Darboe to be straight in from the start in this game. I thought maybe he'll get brought in off the bench. And I certainly didn't expect Liam Walsh to be in from the start. But Walsh was the standout player in that midfield and looked like our best ball playing midfielder that we've had from large parts of the season.
Yeah, and I think clearly there's a bit of cloudness from I guess some of the Luton fans. He's had two red cards. But arguably, he probably could have had a third in his Luton career so far. So that clearly is a big blot on his record at the minute for Luton, and I completely get that. I mean, for me, I was really angry with him when he got that second red card. Um, but what he is on the ball a very talented technical player, and you can see why, despite his injury record and clearly now his sort of card record, you can see why he's liked by not just I guess us as a club, but I know Swansea sort of looked after him for a while. So um, should he be our first choice or starting centre mid? Probably not. But in the situation that we're in now with regards to the midfield bodies we have, he probably is one of the best progressive midfielders we have. So I'm not against him being in. I think for me the question mark was, you said, the makeup of that midfield. Obviously, in the Canberra, in a position that he's known to play in, more of like a midfield two alongside Walsh. But just again, a question mark as to why you played Darboe and the Canberra in the midfield when you had a more aggressive midfielder. I think Marv was okay yesterday. I think we were obviously chatting on the group chat, and people are saying that they thought he had a decent game. I probably wasn't as positive on Marv as others. I thought I think when he's in duels, I think he's strong and he wins the ball well, but I just can see him being passed through too easily. I think his legs, you can see, are clearly gone, which, again, nothing against him. He's obviously given the stage of his career that he's in. But I would have liked to have seen Darboe in the Canberra's position as that ball winner next to Walsh, who was that sort of deeper line playmaker, and then stick Nelson off Morris. So yeah, I think no overly negative performances in that midfield. Maybe just a bit of question marks in terms of where they were on the pitch, but um, can't be overly negative given that there's, I guess, bigger issues at the minute.
Yeah, it was surprising to see how high Darboe was playing, particularly when you look at where he's played for AIK, and there must have been a few AIK fans watching because at half time on Luton's half time post on Twitter, there was an AIK fan who'd commented, "Why is Fane playing behind the striker when he's a six?" or something along those lines, and it raised a lot of questions on that front. And it did raise a lot of questions. And when Nakamba was struggling as much as he was, I was really surprised that Edwards didn't drop Darboe deeper and bring someone else into that midfield or into the attack just to provide a different option, because it took quite a while for that change to happen.
Again, yeah, there's not really much more you can say. I think we've said it before. His in-game management is poor. Um, what QPR scored, what, 61 minutes was it? And then that sort of those four changes came between the 74th and 85th or so minutes. So he leaves it 13 minutes after they make it 2-1. And then you've got 16 plus added to go, and you still not made any changes. It's just a bit strange. And it okay, whether or not you think Marv is playing well or not, ultimately you put players in positions that they can impact. And maybe if you want Darbo on the pitch more, you put Darbo back into Mars' position and get an actual attacker on the pitch. And in the end, he brought on Eli to go to more of a 4-4-2 rather than a 4-4-1-1 type system. But it has to happen earlier. Like you almost don't care what, you just have to do something. And then yet again, the changes later in the game is Corley Woodrow in centre midfield, and you think, okay, fine, you bring an attack on the pitch, but then you just lose all structure. And I think from 75 minutes onwards, even despite the changes, okay, there was probably a few late chances in terms of crosses into the box and stuff, but nothing that you could really say you carved them open or created sort of too much. And yet again, the changes didn't work. So not only is the issue that he's making the changes late, but the changes that do come are just, I think, a little bit wrong. Can't complain that you bring on Adebayo and Brown, etc., sort of late on, and they're good options on the bench, but you need to put them in their stronger positions. And yeah, Corley Woodrow for as a centre midfielder 3 times in 3 games now. I think that is it's a man that's desperate and running out of ideas and just scrambling around to try and get a result because it's not going his way. And I think in large part down to himself.
We've spoken about the opening goal in the game, but I wanted to reflect a bit on the other 2 goals in the game because despite leading for most of that first half, we did go in at half-time level thanks to a brilliant glancing header from Mark McGuinness. And it's something we've seen McGuinness do on quite a few occasions this season, dominate in that box and get his head to the ball in from the corner. And with Alfie supposedly nearly back from injury, you can only hope that maybe we could be even more dangerous from corners, which is pretty hard considering the stats that came up last night was 48% of our goals this season have come from corners, but it was a really, really good header to bring us level. The goal that put them back ahead, though, let's talk about that because whilst we can moan about the decisions from Edwards to bring on players when he did and the formation and everything else, there is absolutely nothing that we could have done about the way that goal came about, apart from not give away the free kick in the first place. And even that is a bit of an ask with the players they had in those attacking positions. But I can't remember who it was who struck the ball, but the deflection it took off Morgan Fox was probably never going to happen again in the next 50 or 60 games.
No, you're right. Obviously unfortunate. And Edwards will hide behind that in terms of, oh, that's the reason we lost. But that's not the reason we lost. Like, had that goal not gone in, QPR would have found a way. They probably wouldn't have made the change with Frey, and he would have stayed on longer, and they would have benefited from a chance later in the game. So yeah, I can't complain too much. It's frustrating, but again, we can help ourselves. We can score whilst we're on top. We can make the changes earlier and get back to make it 2-2 early. I think that there was a couple of chances straight after they scored that we could have put away. So I don't really want to get into it too much, if I'm quite honest, because it's one of those things. Yes, it goes against us. Is it the gods trying to sort of say to the club to make the change and say, look, these are going to go against you whilst you got Edwards in charge? I don't know. But yeah, we're sat here, what now, on the 7th of Jan, is it? And yeah, still Edwards is in charge, and it doesn't look like he's gonna make the change anytime soon.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like there'll be a change, no matter how bad the results get at the moment. And it's a very tough game coming next, which we'll talk about after the break. But I just want to quickly talk a little bit more about the game because we mentioned the subs that came on, and yet again, Edwards made those subs incredibly late. Hashi should have come on at half time, as you mentioned, I think. Maybe even earlier with the way Walters was struggling, but I think that would have been particularly harsh. But the lack of options in midfield was a bit concerning. When you did have Clicker and Pelly on the bench and he still brought Woodrow into that midfield, what does that say to you about the way Edwards is thinking at the moment?
Just desperate. He literally he's desperate. He's thinking, well, if I can stick Corley in there, and then we've got a chance from a second phase of a set piece, and his strength is to sort of be a fox in the box and be a good finisher. Maybe we'll get a second phase and he'll stick one in the back of the net. And it almost worked at Bristol City, but it didn't, because obviously Woodrow had that decent chance. and he's not really had a chance to note since then. So yeah, it is desperation right now. As you say, you've got options on the bench. Ironically, the one time he used Pelly, he managed to get a goal in a turnaround win, which was now turns out to be our last win. Um, so yeah, it is really really strange. Clearly, no Joe Taylor on the bench, so it seems like he's off to Huddersfield. And again, we're sat in January the 7th, seeing teams bringing players, and all we've signed so far is a centre back, who is whilst promising, he's not going to impact for the next few months. So yeah, it's a really really volatile position. We're in a relegation battle quite clearly, and yeah, really intrigued to see what happens between now and I think our next home game's on the 18th of January. I think so. If nothing's done by then yeah, it starts to get a bit squeaky bum time, because you're 12 days out from the end of the January window with no actual new first team signing, a manager in charge that is currently desperate, and going into a game against Preston, who yeah you should be beating at home, but there's no guarantees, because they're a team that can I guess mix it up, and could certainly come to us and get 3 points, as they have done in recent seasons.
And we're going to go to a quick break now. But before we go, don't forget to check us out on social media. That's at Oak Road Hatter on all your social media outputs, whether that's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or Blue Sky. And check us out for the latest content from us online and on our podcast and anything from our shop. But we're going to go to a break. And when we get back, we'll be looking ahead to a very, very difficult trip to Nottingham. Welcome back to Oak Road Hatter, where I'm still joined by Jamie Castle. And now we're looking ahead to an FA Cup trip. And it's the FA Cup third round, which we all love the FA Cup third round. I even love the FA Cup third round draw. What I wasn't too happy about was the team we got from that draw. And that's not because it's not a good place to go, because I love going to the City ground, but it's because we're now playing against one of the most informed teams in English football, in Nottingham Forest, they're now unbeaten, or they've won their last 6 games on the bounce, with their most recent result coming last night at the same time as we were losing to QPR. They beat Wolverhampton Wanderers away 3-0, giving them their sixth win in a row, and they're a really really tough prospect at this point, Jamie.
Yeah, and I guess it shows what happens when you change to a manager that gets something good out of the players. I think if you look back to the Nottingham Forest that we faced in the Prem, I think that they had some good players, and I mean that their attacking line is basically the same, right, with regards to Hudson-Odoi, Gibbs White, Elanga, and Wood. Like nothing's changed, but what's changed is that they're in a tactical system with a manager that gets the best out of them defensively, and now they're keeping clean sheets for fun. I don't know the stat in terms of clean sheets, but I think they're probably one of the best defenses in the league. I mean, just look now, they've conceded 19 goals in the Premier League, which is the same as Liverpool, and one more than Arsenal. So it just shows how strong their defense is in the Prem. And yeah, I mean, again, there's obviously the asterisk that it's unlikely that they're gonna basically make no changes from the last league game, albeit not impossible. But it's a strong team, and if it is a full strength Nottingham Forest team, then we probably need to get behind the sofa, because it could be really really dangerous. But yeah, clearly we're hanging on hope that they make a few changes. They've got a pretty deep squad. We're just obviously looking off air. They've got Toffolo there still, Lewis O'Brien's there still, so they've got some still good footballers, but clearly aren't getting a look in at the minute in terms of their best 11. So yeah, I'm hoping that they make some changes. Otherwise, it could be a very very long afternoon.
Yeah, they've got some very, very good players in that side, and it's the defence that stands out, as you mentioned. They've kept the most clean sheets in the Premier League with 9, and that doesn't fill us with loads of confidence at the rate we concede goals at times. But as you mentioned there, they might rotate. but there's still a lot of very good players in that squad. Someone who hasn't played much recently is James Ward-Prowse, who they brought in the summer, and he's a player that could cause problems against us. Frustratingly, we've still got many of the same players we had last season in the Premier League when we actually drew with them twice, getting late goals in both games. But you look at the directions we've gone since, and it's completely polar opposite. And I'm sure Nottingham Forest fans will absolutely love the prospect of putting a few goals past us.
Yeah. Again, you just compared to how we were last season. It was a very memorable away day at the City Ground, 2-2 at Adebayo. Great, I guess, great comeback, great goal to sort of get the equaliser. But both we as a club and him as a player are currently a shadow of our former selves. You can't see Adebayo dominating their defence like he did for large parts last season. Yeah, it just shows how football can change, how you're competing at the same end of the Prem last season and you're within a matter of points apart going late into the season. Clearly they pulled away late on, but you sort of within a few points of each other and a few places of each other going late into the spring last year, and now roll forwards 8 months and we're 20th there, third. Yeah, that's quite a few places, so that just shows how damning football can be at times.
But we really would love the chance to go to Nottingham Forest and get an FA Cup upset, which is what the competition is really all about. And people love the idea of an FA Cup upset, but they're few and far between nowadays just because of the financial differences between divisions. But when you look at it on paper, you think if we play as well as we did against Watford, and that is a big if, and if Nottingham Forest rotate, it's not impossible that we could get something from it.
No, no, it's never impossible. It's football, right? As I just said, football's a funny old game, and look what's happened since the last time we played each other. Um, is it likely? Not at all. It's going to be a very tough test. That there's a lot of things that will need to go our way in order to get a result. But fundamentally, if we can go to Norwich and get a win when we're non-league and they're Premier League, then clearly we can go to Forest at the weekend and get a win as well. So not impossible. It's the magic of the cup, as you say, and I do like a good third round cup tie. But yeah, if you again you'd struggle to find a Luton fan that goes into that game on Saturday with confidence that we'll go there and get a result. I think at this stage for me the best we can hope for, although I don't want it, is probably get there and get a replay back at the Kenny or have the been scrapped from like is it from before the fifth round, so we can't even have a replay anymore. So yeah, so no replay. So the best we can hope for is probably penalties.
I mean, personally, I'm hoping that Stuart Atwell is the referee. I'm sure that'd be a very popular decision with everyone involved, although quite
It would certainly
unlikely.
help us.
I'm sure the tabloids would absolutely love though if Stuart Atwell was somehow involved. But yeah, that's definitely not going to happen. Um, we're going to try and predict a Luton team between us now, which is going to be quite challenging because it's the FA Cup and quite often teams like to rotate. But I don't think Edwards will rotate that heavily. I think there'll be players coming into the side that maybe should have come on earlier against QPR potentially. And we don't really know the situation with Alfie. He was rumoured to be back for the QPR game, but he wasn't. So maybe he could be back for this game as well.
I hope not, because the last thing I want is him to start or come on against Forest and make his injury worse. You have to be absolutely like 100 million% sure that he is fully fit to play him at the weekend. It would be stupid for him to start and him not be completely certainly fully fit. Because could you imagine the outrage if you start Alfie and he comes off injured? That would just be shooting yourselves in the foot. So I for one hope he doesn't start. I think I would start Hashi at right back. Again, I mean that they set up in a 4-2-3-1, so fairly similar to how he played last night against QPR. So I hope that he sticks with the back four and gives it another go. Yeah, I think Hashi right back, probably stick with McGuinness and Holmes unless there's someone else that comes back fit that we don't know about. Um, Probably haven't got any other option other than Bell at left back unless you want to give JJ a go. And then midfield two, do you put Krause and Clark back in maybe, or do you do Krause and Walsh, or put Darbo back in the midfield where he probably um, plays his best football? I'd like to see probably Jacob Brown come in maybe on the right. Do you play Chong or Nelson off of Morris, or do you go to two forwards and do Morris and Eli in a 4-4-2? Yeah, there is room to move, right, and there is room to sort of do a few changes and try and give other formations, but other formulas and I guess pairings a go. But I doubt it's going to change an awful lot.
I mean, for me, I think Krause should be back in the side. I think he's the sort of player that would relish playing in a pretty hostile atmosphere as we expect it to be. You can see how much he loves playing at Kenilworth Road and he's constantly trying to get the crowd going. Well, he won't need to get the Nottingham Forest fans going when Luton turn up. So I'd have him in midfield, probably with Dabo, and maybe I'd keep Walsh in there. I was pretty impressed by the way Walsh played. And Nottingham Forest don't have loads of the ball in their games, so if we have got the ball, he's the sort of player you want in there, distributing it to the other players in our side. But then, as you mentioned there, who else do you play in that front three as we expect it to be? I mean, I think Jacob Brown probably has to be in there just from how good he is in the press.
But then you say obviously that just go back to the midfield first of all. You said you probably have Krause starting and Darbo in there with Walsh still in there. Then who plays that more advanced role? Because I don't think you can do a flat midfield three because then you've got Morris who then is isolated up top and probably isn't strong enough to hold it up and wait for the midfield to I guess progress the yards that we need to get up the pitch. So we've almost got too many central midfield options now where you've got no midfielder that really is a number 10 other than Nelson, and maybe then you can put Chong in there, but there's no sort of, you've got Darbo, Krause, Walsh, Clark. Clark maybe could do it. I think maybe has the quality to be able to press from the front and I guess have the ability to, if he gets in those areas, finish or find the right pass. So I think Clark probably is the one that plays off of Morris if you stick with the 4-2-3-1. Other than that, most of our central midfielders are exactly that. They're not attacking midfielders. So I wouldn't want to see Darbo, Krause, and Walsh because then there's question marks and as to who plays where. But maybe if it's Krause and Darbo as a bit more of a solid midfield pairing with then Clark in front, then that could be a better option. Then yeah, that front three. Yeah, you got obviously Nelson might be shoehorned in there again. Chong maybe play him again at right wing, give him sort of consistent minutes now on that right where he's probably his strongest because it's taken him a long time to find his way out there and now maybe you just give him a run of games in the side just to try and play him into form and hopefully when he's in a stronger position he starts to find the old Chong. Then yeah, you got Brown and Woodrow and Eli fighting for the four positions. Yeah, there's lots of players you can change around and it'd be an interesting team to see when it comes out at 2 p.m. on Saturday.
I mean, we have got options in attacking positions, and it's certainly the attack that has been firing blanks recently. So hopefully, Edwards picks the right combination, and we'll see a better outcome with what I expect to be very few chances that we get in front of goal. As you mentioned now, probably going to be quite a difficult one to predict, and we won't know until 2 p.m. on Tuesday. Something I also want you to predict is the score. And there's only you and me today, so I'm coming to you first on that.
If it's a full strength team, then you're probably in the range of fours and fives. But I think on the basis that they're going to rotate, but obviously they'll still be strong, but they're still going to be Premier League and Championship players in that team that Forest put out. But you're probably going to rest two or three of their front four. You're going to probably rest one or two of their back four. So there's going to be a few changes, which I think will give us a bit of room to breathe, thankfully. So I think we'll still lose, but I don't think it'll be as damning as everyone expects. So I'm going to go 2-0 Forest.
Yeah, I also think it's going to be 2 goals for Forest. I think we might nick a goal, but I think it'll be very much a consolation goal and they'll dominate the large parts of the game. So I'm going to go 2-1 Forest. and that's probably me being quite optimistic here. We'd love to know your score predictions if you're listening to this, so let us know in the comments or tweet us at Oak Road Hatter and let us know what you think. Just finally, Jamie, I just wanted to ask you one last question about this game. It's the FA Cup, and obviously away from league action. Does that mean it's a free hit for Rob Edwards?
Well, it would be very strange if we lose the game and then he gets sacked, right? I think you can't judge him on this game as much as, yeah, if it is 5 or 6, then maybe that might be the trigger that they pull. But I think it would be, whilst the right choice to sack him, it would be a strange one to sack him just because he's lost 3 or 4-0 to Forest on the weekend. So yeah, I wouldn't call it a free hit because I think he's run out of free hits now. He's very much in credit at the minute in terms of he's starting to outstay his welcome a little bit. So he's got more in his bank than he deserves, I think. So yeah, not a free hit, but it would be very strange if he gets sacked after the Forest game.
Thank you. I think that's everything from us today. If you have any opinions on anything we've talked about, let us know on social media. That's at Oak Road Hatter. But from myself and from Jamie, thank you very much for listening. And we may come away from Saturday with an FA Cup upset.